The first thing Eleanor felt upon arrival was the salt sticking to her skin, like an old invitation to breathe again. Summer was opening glass doors in the isolated beach house, and the wind entered without asking for permission, pushing curtains, rustling papers, bringing the murmur of the tide like someone whispering a secret. She parked, turned off the car, and held the steering wheel for a few seconds, as if she still needed the borrowed courage from the last few miles. 40 years old, American, strong shoulders of someone accustomed to carrying the world, brown hair with waves the sun was beginning to gild, blue eyes that, from a distance, seemed calm. Up close, they had the texture of someone starting over. The divorce still cast a shadow, but there, before that August sea in California, the shadow seemed to retreat a step. Chloe crossed the room like an impatient ray of sunshine, sneakers dragging on the wood, backpack on her shoulders, laughing at something on her phone. "This house is going to save our summer, Mom," she said, and it was like turning on a light that hadn't burned in a long time. Eleanor followed her to the porch. The wind messed up their hair, and the two of them stared at the horizon line, that stroke which separates what was left behind from what could still be. The neighborhood was almost silent, a sequence of low roofs, blue windows, and stairways with accumulated sand. Somewhere, a dog barked lazily. The street smelled of jacaranda and sea salt. Summer arrived as the sun began to tilt. A white car, low music, a trunk with a surfboard and a smile that seemed bigger than the afternoon itself. 20 years old, American, skin warm from the sun, light blonde hair halfway down her back, green eyes with a sparkle that mixed mischief and curiosity. The worn-out denim shorts, the unhurried t-shirt, the sandals slapping the entrance as if marking a rhythm the house needed to relearn. "Aunt Elle, can I call you Eleanor, right?" Her manner was simple and direct, a light contour in her words that didn't push away, it drew closer. Eleanor noticed, without meaning to, the contrast between Summer's evident youth and the almost austere care with which she held things, like someone who knows everything can slip away. It was a small detail, but it remained. At the inaugural dinner, pasta with roasted tomatoes and basil from the local market, the house gained new voices. Chloe talked about playlists and secret beaches. Summer talked about the smell of the ocean at 5 in the morning, when the world seems more sincere. Eleanor spoke little, but each came with a smile that stretched at the corner of her mouth, half surprised to have returned. The open windows let the breeze in, and the lamp over the table projected warm circles on the wood, like a private sun. There was a lightness there that wasn't just from the food, it was the kind of lightness that settles when no one has asked for anything yet, when the future still fits in every direction. On the first night, the house taught its rhythm. Wind, sea, silence, creaking wood. Eleanor went downstairs for water and found the living room like a dark cinema, sofas in half-light, shadows of plants on the rug, the moon tracing a silver path on the sea's surface. Summer was on the porch, legs crossed, in a large sweatshirt, her hair still damp. "I can't sleep when the tide comes in," she said, without turning. "It feels like the world is breathing harder." Eleanor rested her hand on the railing, feeling the wood's roughness on her skin. "Maybe that's what we need," she replied. "To listen to someone breathing for us, until we remember how to do it." The two of them stayed silent for a while, and the silence between them wasn't an emptiness, it was an open field. Summer pulled her sleeves down, hid her hands, and let out a small laugh, almost a bridge. "Chloe always said you're good with metaphors." Eleanor smiled, like someone who didn't expect to get back what they say without realizing. Metaphors are shelter when things don't fit into a name. The conversation stayed there, leaning on the edge of the night. There was nothing improper to record, nothing the world could point to. But in the way Summer tilted her head to listen, in the care with which Eleanor chose each word so as not to scare the newly arrived piece, there was a delicate trace of something moving without making a sound. A premonition. The following days opened like new pages. In the morning, Chloe and Summer left early with their surfboards, laughed loudly in the garage, and Eleanor watched with a mug of coffee, leaning against the door, feeling the house wake up. She noticed the lightness with which Summer moved through the spaces, the way she touched things, a firm step, but always attentive. She also noticed Chloe's almost protective care for her friend, as if she were bringing Summer by the hand. "We'll be back for lunch," Chloe would shout, and the sound of the two of them, mixed with the gate's creak, went down the street like an improvised song. In the afternoon, the house smelled of sunscreen and sea in the hallway. Summer crossed the kitchen with a glass of juice, her hair in an improvised bun, a few loose strands touching the nape of her neck. Eleanor noticed these small architectures of the body like someone observing a landscape, from a safe distance, but with pleasure. Summer laughed, talked about a book found at a garage sale, and in those moments, age didn't weigh as a measure, it seemed just a number resting on the table, while the conversation flowed inside like clear water. Eleanor, who had always been reserved, found a way to be lighter next to that clear energy, as if the air around her was untangling. One afternoon with a sharp wind, the low clouds made the light softer. Eleanor decided to tidy the living room bookshelf, a good task for restless hands. She found old photos, loose notes, napkins with hastily written phrases. Summer appeared at the door with uncomplicated curiosity. "Can I help?" She entered slowly, almost asking permission to step into a memory. The two sat on the rug, spread out the albums, and began to browse. "You were beautiful here," said Summer, pointing to a photo of Eleanor in her early 20s, white shirt, hair tied up, a bold sparkle in her eyes. "I still am," Eleanor replied, in a light tone that carried a thread of thorn and another of laughter. "Just in a different way." Summer nodded, serious for a moment, like someone storing precious information. "Yes. In a way that lasts longer." These conversations were building a bridge that neither of them named. What existed was a collection of small gestures, an attentive delicacy, a way of being close without invading. Summer listened with genuine interest when Eleanor talked about plants that survived the salty wind, about the best times to walk on the soft sand without sinking too much, about the silent lessons the sea offers to those who wait. And sometimes, they reversed roles. Summer told how the body learns to read the waves, how fear doesn't go away but becomes a compass when you train your gaze, how it's possible to fail 10 times and still want to try once more, because the beach gives you back. With each sharing, something tightened inside Eleanor, not a knot, but a tie. At dusk, the house had a moment that seemed intentional, oblique light through the large living room window, suspended dust like discreet glitter, a strip of shadow on the floor marking the sun's path to the kitchen. In these moments, Summer would appear with 2 glasses of lemon water, leave one near Eleanor, and wait for a comment about the day. "How can you stay inside yourself for so long?" she asked once, in a curious tone, without judgment. Eleanor thought, looked away toward the window and back. "You learn to dwell in your own silence when the noise is not home." Summer stayed quiet, nodded slowly, and the expression in her eyes, a mix of respect and tenderness, touched Eleanor with a delicacy that didn't need touch. On the 3rd evening, the wind worsened. The street became almost deserted, the sea raised gray scales, and the house seemed to embrace the 3 of them. Chloe went up to her room with loud music and the easy laugh of someone resting their body after the cold water. Eleanor turned on a lamp in the living room and put on an old record she found in the cabinet, a female voice with a cozy timbre, guitars that reminded her of the house's wood. Summer appeared with a blanket over her shoulders. "It feels like a movie in here," she said, and that simple phrase brought Eleanor a feeling of belonging she hadn't felt in months. "Maybe we need a soundtrack to learn how to breathe," she replied, and the two laughed in that light way that tears down walls without fanfare. Eleanor's hands busied themselves with folding, aligning, organizing the world into items that fit in place. Summer had the habit of taking things apart to understand, of spreading things out to recognize patterns. The meeting of these 2 movements, the one that orders and the one that experiments, created an unexpected harmony. There was a particular vibration when they shared the same space. It wasn't the tension of the forbidden yet, not the fear of what could be, it was the feeling that something delicate was being built, layer by layer, like someone learning to read the wind before entering the sea. And, in a few moments, when the laughter ended and the silence settled again, Eleanor felt her heart respond like a tuned string after a long time. Discreet, but clear. On the night the fog descended, Summer appeared in the kitchen in a sweatshirt and hair tied up any which way, her green eyes more intense under the yellow ceiling light. "Do you want tea?" she asked, already reaching for the kettle. Eleanor watched the way she moved around, comfortable without being invasive, and said, "I do," almost in a whisper. The smell of mint opened the air. The two leaned against the counter, side by side, while the steam rose. "I missed you this morning," said Summer, casual, like someone commenting on the weather. Eleanor perceived the narrow path through which that phrase passed and chose a safe place to land. "I went for a walk. I needed to hear the house from the inside." Summer laughed softly. "And what did it say?" Eleanor stared into the mug, as if the water could answer. "That I still have breath." The wind slammed the window, and the two moved at the same time to close it. Hands close, a light bump of shoulders, the care not to bump too much. The brief contact left a warmth that ran up Eleanor's arm like someone turning on a light inside. She took a step back, not from Summer, but from the good shock of feeling something alive. Summer noticed and offered an elegant way out. She changed the subject, talked about old movies, about a director she loved for the way women occupy the frame. Eleanor entered the conversation with relief. The kindness of that retreat taught her that there was another kind of courage there, the courage not to force the scene, to wait for the right time. Sometimes, late at night, when the house held only the sound of the sea and Chloe's regular breathing in the upstairs room, Eleanor would come down the stairs slowly and stop in the living room like someone visiting a secret. Once she found Summer asleep on the sofa, a blue-covered book open on her chest, her breathing calm, the blanket slipping. Eleanor approached to cover her better and, in the moment she adjusted the fabric, noticed the small freckles on the tops of her cheekbones, a detail the sun made more visible. She retreated 2 steps, leaned against the bookshelf, and waited for her heart to slow down. There was no guilt there was recognition. Of herself, of her own body remembering it is capable of feeling tenderness, of her own desire relearning how to walk like someone stepping barefoot on cold sand, attentive, awake, without rush. In her room, before sleeping, Eleanor opened her phone to look at a photo Summer had taken of her on the porch, a portrait without posing, hair messy, eyes half closed from the wind, a smile she hadn't seen since before the divorce. The portrait said, "There is still light." And, for the first time in a long time, she believed it. She turned off the screen, lay down, and the sound of the sea seemed to beat in the same rhythm as her chest. Outside, the fog enveloped the house like a blanket. Inside, a promise that didn't have words yet. The next morning, the sun broke through as if it had woken up late. Chloe left early with the surfboards, shouted, "I'll be back for lunch," and the door closed softly. In the kitchen, Eleanor opened the windows, let the air in, and set the table with fruit and warm bread. She heard barefoot steps in the hallway and, when she looked up, found Summer standing at the door, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a smile that started before her mouth. For one long second, no sound, just that thin light coming in behind her, drawing on the wall an outline that seemed made to fit there. Eleanor inhaled, searching for a common word to hold the moment, and almost said, "Good morning," almost. Because Summer had already taken a step forward, her voice low, the simple question that hung in the air between the two of them. "Walk with me on the beach before breakfast." The sand was still cold when they went down the wooden staircase to the beach. The morning sky had that porcelain color before the blue, and the water was translucent enough to reveal small stones in the shallows. Summer walked a step ahead, leaving light footprints the tide erased without hurry. Eleanor followed, feeling the wind fill her lungs, as if breathing in parts, first the skin, then the chest, then a deeper place that had been forgotten. They didn't speak for a few minutes. The silence was good, not the kind that weighs, but the kind that offers space. When they stopped, Summer tilted her face to let the sun touch her eyelids and said, without looking, "Sometimes I come to see the sea just to remember I don't need to control everything." Eleanor let out a gentle laugh. "And do you succeed?" "Almost never. But I like to try." The small wave wet both their ankles. Eleanor noticed how Summer adjusted her body weight, firm and light at the same time. 20 years old and a calm that didn't come from naivety, it came from someone who learned to converse with greater forces, water, wind, time. She wanted to say that, but kept it. Instead, she asked about the new surfboard, listened about fins and balance, about the exact moment when the wave stops being a threat and becomes momentum. And she caught herself thinking that maybe it was like that with some feelings. If you try to block them, it hurts. If you learn to paddle with them, it becomes movement. On the way back, Chloe was already in the kitchen, hair in a crooked bun, laughing at something on her phone. "You went without me?" she complained in a playful tone. Summer made a face. "I invited your mom to an exclusive ocean breathing session." Chloe narrowed her eyes, pretending to be jealous, and hugged her friend from behind. "Traitor." Eleanor smiled, holding the cup to disguise the sudden heat in her cheeks. The laughter of the two filled the house with the familiar sound that always made everything seem safe. For a moment, reality aligned, the three of them, a table, toast, fruit, the whole day ahead. Nothing dangerous, nothing out of place. But it was enough for Summer to lightly touch Eleanor's wrist to pass the honey jar, a quick, distracted touch, for a thread of electricity to rise, silent, up her skin. The rest of the morning was filled with tidying and plans. Chloe talked about a beach party on the weekend. Summer suggested buying paper lanterns. Eleanor joined in the game, making lists, choosing quilts, testing lamps. The house seemed to enjoy being looked at, as if it thanked each object for finding its place again. At one point, Summer opened the living room window to let in more light, and the wind lifted an old photograph, which landed at Eleanor's feet, her, young, with a camera hanging from her neck. Summer bent down to pick it up and looked at it for a second longer than one does with photos of strangers. "You looked like you weren't afraid of anything." "I was afraid of everything," replied Eleanor, taking back the photo. "But I disguised it well." When Chloe left to meet friends, the house entered an afternoon interlude. The sun hit the wall at an angle, forming a golden rectangle on the floor. Summer appeared with a small bottle of sunscreen. "Do you burn easily?" she asked, pointing to Eleanor's bare shoulder. She was about to answer with a distracted, "Yes," but Summer had already sprayed some into her own hand. The touch came carefully, like someone asking permission, a cold line that warmed in seconds, a glide that didn't go past the collarbone, as if the skin were a map of a safe zone. Eleanor kept her breathing steady, but felt her heart take a step forward. "Thank you," she said, and neither of them needed to look at the other to understand that there, in that minimal gesture, was a border drawn in pencil. "What did you most want to do before?" Summer searched for the word like someone choosing a stone from a river, before everything got heavy. Eleanor thought of the postponed trips, the photos she never developed, the stories she would write and never wrote. "I liked photographing people on the street. Small scenes. The instant before someone smiles, or when they thought no one was watching." "Do it again," said Summer, like someone offering a door. "Start with me." She posed in no particular way, leaning against the doorframe, the light outlining her face. Eleanor raised her phone, but the click was delayed. It wasn't the best angle she was looking for, it was the truth that appears when the other lowers their guard. Summer, patient, held the gaze. When the photo was taken, there was a sweet glow in her expression, a mix of courage and fragility. Summer laughed, surprised by her own face. "It looks like I'm listening to myself." And she handed the phone back to Eleanor like someone returning a secret found on the ground. At night, the three of them cooked together. Chloe chopped vegetables, Summer seasoned, Eleanor stirred the pot. The old kitchen radio played an old song, and the singer's voice seemed to slide along the walls like oil. At one point, Chloe commented, "People are saying the tide will be perfect on Saturday. We could stay up later tonight." Summer agreed with enthusiasm. Eleanor pretended not to notice the implicit invitation in her expression and just said, "You two go, I'll stay with the house." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "You could come too." She smiled, from the corner. "Okay, at least come down to listen to the music." Eleanor nodded, without promising. Her heart, however, had already signed in. After dinner, Chloe went upstairs for a video call. Summer and Eleanor stayed to clear the dishes. The kitchen door let in the cool breeze from the patio. A glass slipped from Summer's hand, hit the sink and didn't break, but made a sound that silenced both of them for an instant. Summer laughed at her own startle. "I always forget that objects have weight." "People too," said Eleanor, without thinking. The words hung in the air between them. Summer leaned lightly on the counter and sought Eleanor's gaze. When she found it, she held it for a time that surpassed the limit of casual. "And when the weight is good?" she asked, her voice low. Eleanor felt the question enter, occupy a space without knocking. She answered in the most honest way she knew, a thread of voice, "You need arms to carry it." The next day, the wind shifted. The sea became a more intense green, and the seagulls streaked across the sky in an anxious design. Chloe left early, promising to return for lunch. Summer stayed. She said she had twisted her ankle, but the way she moved revealed more a desire to stay than pain. They made coffee slowly. They opened the windows until the house seemed like a boat. Summer put on a record that spoke of distant beaches, and both laughed at the cliché of listening to songs about the sea while seeing the sea. At 11, a heavy cloud settled over the street. "It's going to rain," said Eleanor. "I like it when it rains and the beach resists," replied Summer. "It feels like we can too." The first thunder was deep, almost a warning. The light hiccuped, then stabilized. Summer approached the large living room window, pressed her forehead against the cold glass. "When the weather closes in like this, I remember that everything beautiful can be frightening too." Eleanor stood beside her, the same distance between bodies they had learned to respect. Beauty frightens because it offers what we sometimes think we don't deserve. Summer turned her face slowly, as if that movement choreographed understanding. "And you, do you deserve?" Eleanor's silence was almost an answer. Summer didn't insist. She merely let the question touch the right place. Chloe returned without warning, soaked and happy, bringing with her a wind of loud music from her phone and the smell of rain. "You wouldn't believe the size of the wave." She talked, and for a few minutes the house returned to the register where everything is simple: 3 voices, dry towels, laughter. But when Chloe went up for a shower, the atmosphere of suspension returned, now sharper. Summer was drying her hair with her hands, and Eleanor, in an impulse she didn't recognize, held out a towel. Their fingers touched, a second too long. Summer lowered her eyes, and there existed the concrete risk of a larger gesture. The sound of the shower upstairs brought them both back to the ground. In the afternoon, the 3 went to the market. Bags, fruit, new candles for the living room. On the way back, Chloe lagged behind, taking a picture of a dog on the sidewalk. Summer and Eleanor walked side by side. The sky had cleared and every leaf seemed freshly washed. "Sometimes I think we are made of versions," said Summer, for no apparent reason. "I like seeing your version with the house." "The house gives me back my edges," replied Eleanor, almost in a whisper. "And you?" She stopped. It was too early for a complete sentence. "And me?" Summer asked, without irony. Eleanor sighed, looking at her own shadow on the sidewalk, elongated. "You give me back courage." At night, Chloe came down with a box in her hand. "Shall we play?" The cards lay on the living room table. They laughed at silly things, made foolish bets, ate grapes as if they were casino chips. At one point, a slower song took over the radio. Chloe got up to answer a message and stood with her back to them, on the other side of the room. Summer, without thinking, hummed a verse softly. Eleanor joined in with a trace of her voice. The meeting of their two voices, their, almost secret, sounded like a settling of accounts with some part of the past. It harmonized a lack. When the song ended, Chloe returned, the night advanced, and they went upstairs. The rain started again around midnight. The house breathed heavier. Eleanor went downstairs, drawn by the pale glow from the kitchen. Summer was there, wrapped in a blanket, a half-finished cup of tea. "Can't sleep?" asked Eleanor. "Trying to," she smiled, tired. "I tried to listen to the tide, but it's too loud. Sit with me for a while." They sat side by side, two bodies that had learned to occupy the same plane without bumping. Words came like drops, slow, precise. Summer talked about her mother who lived far away, about her father who disappeared and reappeared like the moon, about how she had learned to be her own house. Eleanor listened, and in the listening there was a gesture of welcome that didn't need hands. When she replied, she didn't explain herself, she exposed a landscape, fears like cliffs, encounters like rare shells, the feeling of being, for the first time in a long time, in a place where her chest could lower its guard. The light went out suddenly. A click, darkness. The house was left with only the wind and the sea, and a timid line of silver coming in from the street. Summer gave a nervous laugh. "Great. A romantic clip without a script." "There are candles in the drawer," said Eleanor, her fingers finding the already memorized path. She lit two, then one more. The flame trembled and stabilized. The living room gained the contours of an old film. Shadows danced on the walls. Summer brought her hands close to the candle, seeking warmth. Eleanor saw the reflection of the flame in her eyes and thought, in a flash, that there was in Summer a kind of faith in what doesn't yet have a name. And before any gesture could cross the limit, they heard footsteps upstairs, Chloe, opening her bedroom door, coming down a few steps. "Did the power go out there too?" Chloe's voice came, sleepy. "Here too," replied Eleanor, adjusting the candles. Summer took a deep breath, almost relieved, almost frustrated. Chloe came halfway down, saw the two sitting on the floor, the table with cards, the kettle. She smiled. "Are you two in a secret camp?" Summer joked, Eleanor laughed, and the tension that could have broken something turned into just a silly story to tell later. Chloe went back up. The house resumed its breath. Summer ran a hand through her hair, looked at Eleanor with a serious glow. There were questions in that light. What are we? How far will we go? But none of them found words. Because, in the hallway, a light noise indicated that Chloe was still moving, turning on phone flashlights, rummaging through drawers. Summer stood up, pulled the blanket over Eleanor's shoulders in a gesture of care and thanks. "Good night," she said, so gently it seemed like a promise. Eleanor nodded, her whole body conscious of its own contour, like someone fitting back into themselves. "Good night." When she was alone, she walked to the window and watched the sea, now a dark animal breathing. The cold glass pressed against her forehead. She closed her eyes for a second, measuring the distance between what she desired and what was possible, between risk and salvation. The candle made a small wick noise, and when Eleanor opened her eyes again, she saw the reflection of her own mouth about to form a question she didn't yet know who to direct to. In the hallway, light footsteps. In the kitchen, the tea still warm. In the living room, the photograph of Summer leaning against the picture frame, as if it had moved in there without asking permission. Then the doorknob creaked, a tiny sound, as if destiny were breathing through the keyhole, and someone leaned against the door, hesitant. The next morning was born with an exaggerated blue, the kind that seems to promise more than it delivers. Chloe left early on a bicycle, a crooked basket on the handlebars and a plan to visit the beach market. The house breathed differently without her, a good, elastic emptiness. Eleanor opened the windows, put on an old record, and let the music fill the corners. Summer appeared on the stairs in a slightly loose white t-shirt and shorts that seemed stolen from the sun. Her hair tied up high, a few rebellious strands at her temples. "The sea is like a movie today," she said, leaning on the railing like someone using the house as a set. Eleanor smiled, arranging the cushions. "We'll watch the film from the porch." She meant to sound light, but the phrase landed between them with a gentle gravity, like a shell found by chance. The wind lifted the curtains and, for a moment, Eleanor felt herself inside a scene she recognized, even without having lived it. Summer approached the bookshelf and chose a book, opening it at random. She read 2 lines in a low voice about the courage to look fixedly at what frightens you. "I like when words call me back," she commented. "They remind me I can choose how to exist." "And how do you choose?" asked Eleanor, leaning her hip against the table, arms crossed, trying to hide the blossoming nervousness. Summer closed the book with an almost devout delicacy. "Today, I choose to exist near everything that makes me hear my own heart." And, saying this, she didn't look away. They stayed on the porch for a while, the sea tracing stripes of silver down below. Summer talked about a hidden beach behind the rocks, accessible when the tide was low. "Want to see?" she asked, already with her flip-flops in hand. "Now?" Eleanor laughed, surprised by her own immediate desire. "Now. Before the world remembers us." They went down a short trail, among plants smelling of lemon and rocks that retained yesterday's warmth. The small beach appeared suddenly, a perfect cutout, a frame from an old film, light sand, scattered seaweed like indecipherable writing, distant seagulls. Summer left her sandals and ran into the water up to her shins. She came back slowly, splashing, her fingers dripping down her legs, her laugh easy. "It's like entering a secret." Eleanor sat on the sand, legs extended, and let the breeze draw goosebumps on her skin. "Secrets demand care," she said, almost to herself. "And they demand someone to keep them with," returned Summer, sitting down beside her, close enough for the simple scent of soap to mix with the sea salt. The conversation began to gain another temperature. They compared scars, the one on Summer's knee, a memory of a longboard fall, the one on Eleanor's wrist, a souvenir from glass frames in her old studio. Each story came with a laugh and a silence. And in each silence fit a small confession. "Sometimes I'm afraid of being too much," said Summer, drawing circles in the sand. "Too much desire, too much light, too much noise." "Sometimes I'm afraid of being less," confessed Eleanor, watching the tide that rose an inch per minute. "Less courage, less laughter, less space." "Funny," Summer tilted her head, meeting Eleanor's gaze. "Next to you, I feel the right size." "Me too." The answer came out before any filter and stayed there, vibrating on a frequency they both recognized. When they returned, the house had accumulated the midday sun. Chloe sent a message saying she would have lunch out. The effect was immediate. Time opened a corridor. Summer disappeared into her room and reappeared in a short dress with thin straps, dark green, a neckline that wasn't exaggerated but had the precise geometry of something that knows what it's doing. Eleanor didn't comment, she just felt. The dress seemed to gather the living room around Summer, as if the lines of the fabric conversed with the shadows of the plants on the rug. "I'm going to make lemonade," said Summer, and the sound of the knife on the board, the care in rotating the fruit, the citrus scent exploding in the air created its own sensory trail. Eleanor helped, bringing a glass closer, and their hands touched. It wasn't an accidental touch, the kind that quickly pulls away. It was a touch that sought confirmation and found a response. The gesture lasted briefly, but the memory of it remained larger than the moment. "Do you trust me?" Summer asked suddenly, almost smiling at the audacity of her own question. Eleanor breathed, measuring the word like someone measuring the tide. I trust the way you look at me. And that was, at the same time, an answer and an invitation for more care. Summer nodded, serious for a second. Then let me show you something. She led Eleanor to the large window, where the light entered vertically, like a column of water. Stand here. She placed her hands lightly on Eleanor's shoulders, positioning her. Now close your eyes. Notice the wind, the sound of the leaves, how the light touches. Just that. Eleanor obeyed. The world reduced itself to breathing, to the slivers of air passing through her hair, to the subtle warmth rising up the skin of her neck. Do you feel it? Summer asked, her voice a few centimeters away. I feel it. That's what I seek when I enter the sea, the instant when the body understands it can trust. When Eleanor opened her eyes, Summer was close enough for time to do that trick of stretching. There was no precipice there was a bridge, and both of them knew it. Still, they remained where they were, like two sustained notes waiting for resolution. Summer was the first to retreat half a step, offering breath. I have a gift, she said, breaking the spell carefully. She returned with a freshly developed Polaroid from the photo taken the previous day, Eleanor on the porch, hair messy from the wind, the smile undefended. I like seeing you like this. Eleanor held the photo like someone holding a small compass. Thank you for giving me back. The afternoon fell in warm tones. Chloe said she would be late. Summer suggested they prepare the living room for the night, candles on the shelves, the good blanket on the sofa, a sequence of low music. They cooked together again, now with choreographed intimacy. Sometimes their arms crossed, sometimes their backs touched lightly when they swapped places. Small accidents of care. At the table, they talked about past loves without dwelling on names, only on what they learned, that what burns quickly illuminates and what grows slowly warms. And what do you want now? Summer asked, adjusting a candle that insisted on going out. Eleanor looked at the resisting flame. I want to fit within myself and still have space for someone. The phrase was simple, but the subtext had the density of deep sea. After dinner, the rain returned lightly, tapping on the roof like patient fingers. Chloe sent a "be home late" message. The house, again, understood the message. Summer put on a silent film on the television, black and white beach scenes, people running, hats flying, laughter you could almost hear. The sound was provided by the vinyl, a slow female voice, minimalist guitars. Eleanor sat on the sofa. Summer approached with 2 steaming mugs. Jasmine tea, she said. For nights that ask for a path. They sat close, not glued, sharing the blanket. The warmth from Summer's body arrived like a contained electric field. In some moments, their hands met under the fabric, fingers just touching, like someone verifying if the world exists there. There was no rush, there was the precision of something that had finally found language. Sometimes I hate myself for wanting, Eleanor said, in a breath that could have been carried away by the sound of the vinyl needle. And I sometimes hate myself for not waiting, replied Summer, with the same low honesty. But here, now, I can wait. Here, now, I can want. The exchange was not a promise, it was an agreement. Distant thunder made the light flicker, but it remained. Summer leaned her head against the back of the sofa and turned her face to Eleanor. The green dress drew a gentle curve on her collarbone, and her skin had that clean glow of someone who got sun without excess. Eleanor reached out her hand, hesitated in the air, and placed a touch of 2 fingers where the skin met the strap. A short, hesitant, but true touch. Summer closed her eyes for a second, as if that gesture had its own sound. When she opened them, there was a silent decision there. If I come closer, will you push me away? Summer asked, without challenge, only care. If I push you away, hold me, replied Eleanor, and the world, for an instant, seemed to fit into those 2 sentences. The first kiss did not come like lightning, it came like a tide that finally reaches the stone it wanted to touch. Summer leaned in slowly, and Eleanor met her with the same rhythm, without startle, with the precision of someone who doesn't want to miss the note. Their lips touched first lightly, then recognized the path with more firmness, but still within the delicacy that had sustained them from the beginning. Time changed texture. The taste was jasmine with salt and a newborn courage. There was heat, yes, a heat that drew their backs and rose up their napes, but, above all, there was a sense of home that neither of them expected to find there. They pulled away a few centimeters, still within the same air. Summer kept her hand on the line of Eleanor's arm, her thumb making a distracted movement that seemed like a thank you. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm alive," said Eleanor, and the smile came whole, without shadow. "And scared." "Me too." Summer pressed her forehead to Eleanor's, a brief devotion. "We learn together." The creak of the gate interrupted the moment like a sharp cut. Chloe, laughing loudly on the phone, came in through the kitchen, bringing with her the smell of rain and the street. The two recomposed themselves in silence. The blanket covered only what was necessary again, the mugs were placed back on the table, the silent film gained attention. Chloe appeared in the living room, threw herself on the rug. "Do you two never sleep?" she asked, unconcerned. "We were watching the ancient sea," Summer improvised, pointing to the screen. "Wow, so cultured," Chloe laughed, and normality installed itself with the haste of someone saving a vase from falling. Chloe went up soon after, tired. The house was left with the sound of the shower and, then, with the silence the walls recognized. Summer and Eleanor remained side by side on the sofa, now not touching, as if each needed to check if their own contour was still in place. "I don't want to hurt anyone," said Eleanor, looking toward the hallway door, the soft shadow of the steps. "Neither do I," Summer replied, firm and sweet. "So we step carefully. And we speak the truth when it's time." Eleanor nodded, feeling the responsibility land without crushing. "Thank you, for going at my speed." "Thank you for letting me into your house," said Summer, and both knew that house had more than one meaning. They stood up almost at the same time. Summer extinguished the candles with a cupped hand, protecting the flame until the last second. Eleanor put the record back in its sleeve, like someone returning a heart to its case. In the hallway, the air carried a light scent of jasmine and rain. The two stopped in front of their rooms, neighboring doors. For a second, the distance between what they had lived and what could happen seemed like a visible line on the floor. Summer touched the doorframe with her fingers and whispered, "Good night, Eleanor." "Good night, Summer." And there was a new smile attached to the name. When Eleanor entered her own room, she leaned against the door for a moment, like someone who needs to listen to their body. In the mirror, she found a version of herself she thought was forgotten. On the nightstand, the Polaroid. In her chest, still the taste of jasmine and salt. On the other side of the wall, the discreet noise of Summer arranging the blanket. The sea, outside, continued its ancient conversation. It was then that, in an almost inaudible breath, the hallway doorknob gave a light snap, and a minimal beam of light escaped from under the door, as if the night, an accomplice, was waiting for the next decision. The day dawned with a murmur of a hangover, as if the sea had also spent the night thinking too much. Eleanor woke up before the alarm, eyes open on the ceiling, listening to the regular interval of the waves. In the next room, a light sound of footsteps, Summer walking barefoot, the wood creaking in that note she already recognized. The memory of the previous night's kiss appeared without asking permission, brief, precise, unforgettable. Her body responded with a contained warmth, and her mind did what it always does when it's afraid of losing control. It invented tasks. Change the bed sheets. Take out the trash. Wash the cups that weren't even dirty. It was like organizing the world so her heart would fit. In the kitchen, she found Summer in a gray cotton blouse that slipped down her shoulder a bit, revealing the clean curve of her collarbone. Her hair tied up high, loose strands, her skin still with a glow from the previous day's sun. "Good morning," she said, her morning voice low, like someone respecting the house. "Good morning," replied Eleanor, looking away a moment too soon. There was a small stumble of silence and, then, a decision. Summer approached slowly, without breaking the necessary distance, and touched the back of Eleanor's hand with her fingertips, a greeting that said, "I remember, and it's okay." Eleanor allowed the touch as if accepting a compass. The brief gesture aligned the air. The two breathed. And they carried on. Chloe came down next, with the usual energy of someone who already wakes up in the middle of a chapter. She talked about the swell forecast, a message from a friend, an invitation for a bonfire on the beach at nightfall. "You're coming, right?" she asked, her mouth already on the juice glass. Summer shot a quick look at Eleanor, a weightless consultation. "Of course," the mother replied, and felt the word echo within her like a rehearsal of courage. There would be people, music, laughter, lights, the kind of scenario where it's easier to hide in the open. The day ran in a kind of docile suspension. The three went to the market, chose fruit, a new tablecloth, citronella candles, for the mosquitoes, and for the atmosphere. Summer tried on a navy blue dress in a small shop on the back street, light fabric, thin straps, a neckline that described more than it showed. Eleanor, sitting on a wooden bench, waited with an electric patience. When Summer came out of the fitting room, the shop seemed to light up. "So?" asked Summer, biting a smile. Eleanor heard her own voice come out more confident than she felt. "It's like seeing you in the right light." Summer held her gaze for a moment that was worth several. "Then it's this one." In the afternoon, the house smelled of orange and salt. Chloe organized lanterns and brought a straw hat to fulfill the dress code. Summer tied her hair in a higher bun and tried on the new dress with a light jacket over it, which she would take off later when the music demanded it. Eleanor chose a soft white shirt and light pants, a discreet necklace that almost no one would see. Before they left, Summer discreetly pulled Eleanor into the hallway's shadow and adjusted a button that had gone crooked. Her fingers lingered a second too long on the fabric, enough to light an entire path under the skin. "Ready," she whispered. And in that, "ready," there was much of what still had no name. The bonfire gathered familiar and unfamiliar faces. The crackling of the wood competed with a playlist that seemed to have been chosen by several hands, female vocal classics, guitars, gentle beats. Chloe disappeared now and then among groups, greeting people with the easy intimacy of someone who lives the outdoor world. Summer and Eleanor stayed close, but not glued. They talked with neighbors, laughed at random stories, looked at the sea as if they were mentally noting all the details to remember later. When a friend brought a guitar, Summer was pulled to sing a light song, the kind everyone knows half the chorus of. Her voice had the same proximity as the sea in the early morning. Eleanor felt her whole body listen. At one point in the night, Chloe appeared with 3 glasses and a luminous energy. "This is wonderful," she said, handing a citrus drink to each. "And, Mom, thank you for going along with all this." The hug came quickly, sincere, and in Eleanor the gesture produced a deep recognition, the love that had sustained her until then. When Chloe went away again, someone lit more wood, the flame rose, and an improvised dance circle began. Summer leaned her mouth close to Eleanor's ear, close enough for the warmth of her breath to touch the skin. "Come." "I don't dance," Eleanor lied, half laughing. "I dance slowly." Summer offered an open hand, an invitation that accepted no as much as it dreamed of yes. Eleanor breathed and placed her own hand there. They danced little, almost without moving from the spot, like people learning steps invented on the spot. Summer's body, close but respectful, emanated a warmth that seemed to draw lines in the air. Eleanor closed her eyes for a second and let the music do the work, loosen something stuck, rearrange another, allow her shoulders to lower. When she opened them, Summer was looking at her in that recognizing way. You exist so beautifully when you don't try, she said, softly. Eleanor smiled with her eyes. I try less when you're around. The tide turned, the wind made the flames dance higher. A couple stumbled laughing near them, and the circle dispersed. Summer took Eleanor's hand again, now to lead her away from the noise. They walked along the darker strip of the beach, where the bonfire's lanterns became just echoes. Summer's blue dress floated around her knees, and the jacket hung loose from her fingers. The waves broke a few meters away, foam illuminated in silver. I want to apologize to you, said Summer, suddenly. Why? For sometimes wanting to pull you to a place that isn't time yet. Eleanor was silent, feeling the sand yield under her feet. I want to thank you, she replied, finally. For teaching me a time that isn't just fear. And, because the night asked for clarity, she added, I want you close. I just have to figure out how without breaking what is sacred. Summer nodded slowly, accepting the complexity like someone accepts the tide. She approached, touched Eleanor's face with the backs of her fingers, a gesture so soft it seemed to draw light. Then we invent a path. The kiss came next, with the delicacy of someone returning to a known and yet still new place. It was slower than the first, more whole, a fit that didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The salt on their lips, the shared breath, one hand on the ribs to say, here, the other on the nape to say, I am. It lasted the necessary time for the world to reorganize its proportions. They returned to the bonfire with flushed faces, trying to fit back into the scenario without seeming like they had left. Chloe reached them, enthusiastic, telling about a wave she almost caught. You disappeared, she joked. Summer improvised an answer about shells and the bathroom and everyone laughed. The night followed its inevitable course, music that diminishes, laughter that thins, goodbye hugs. On the way back, the three shared the same comfortable silence, each tending to their own thought. Upon arriving, Chloe went straight up. Love you, she tossed from the top of the stairs, without theatrics. Good night. The two replied at the same time, that good night, crossing in the hallway like two threads still learning to braid. In the living room, the citronella candles still held a small ember. Summer took off her jacket, remaining in the blue dress that seemed made for the low light. Eleanor adjusted her necklace, an automatic gesture to gain one more second of control. They stood facing each other, the sound of the house in the background, a distant pipe, the wood breathing, the sea beating. I wanted to ask you for something, said Summer, firm and sweet. Truth. Always. Even when it hurts. Then I'll start now, replied Eleanor. I am afraid. Of what this says about me, of what it could say to Chloe, of what happens tomorrow. But, in the middle of the fear, there is a part of me that is relieved. Because meeting you was like remembering what it is to be whole. Summer held Eleanor's hands between hers, warming them. Fear can walk with us. Lies cannot. The kiss that came after was short, but loaded with yes. Summer pressed her forehead to Eleanor's and breathed together, synchronizing rhythms. We don't need to go further today, she said, reading the invisible tension in the air. But we also don't need to go back to before. I don't know if I can sleep as if nothing happened, admitted Eleanor, with a bit of laughter in her voice. Then we let the night say how it continues. A noise upstairs made them freeze. A door, light footsteps, water in the bathroom. Chloe. Summer let go of Eleanor's hands with a care that was almost a kiss. I'll get water and go up, she whispered. Message me if. She stopped, smiling, if the longing makes noise. It's already making noise, Eleanor returned, and the two laughed softly, accomplices. Summer went to the kitchen. Eleanor extinguished 2 candles, left one lit. She picked up the Polaroid, ran her thumb over the shine, as if smoothing a recent memory. Her phone vibrated with a short message, thank you for today. Her heart, disciplined until then, escaped an inch from the line. In her room, Eleanor opened the window. The wind brought the smell of the lingering night, the tide rising a little. She remembered the phrase Summer had said in the morning, "I dance slowly." And she realized that her own body had begun to understand this new choreography, a cadence that didn't ask for proof, it asked for presence. She lay down, light off, the candle flames still dancing a little in the living room. On the other side of the wall, she heard Summer arrive in her room, open drawers, close windows. Small noises that, on that night, sounded like a song. When she was almost asleep, her phone vibrated again, a buzz that made the candle flames seem to gain breath. "Open the door." 3 words. Eleanor's heart responded before reasoning. She got up, crossed the silent hallway, and, before touching the doorknob, heard the most precise sound of the night, 2 knocks of knuckles, discreet, hopeful, searching for the same courage on the other side. She pressed her forehead against the wood for a second, a prayer without a church, a simple request to the world, care. And then she turned the key, slowly, feeling the air from the room and from the house mix, like when 2 tides meet on the same beach, each bringing its story to write a new line on the same map. The door opened just enough to let the blue dress and a recognizable scent of salt and jasmine pass through. The night held its breath, the house advised silence, the sea agreed. And, on the threshold between inside and outside, between what already is and what is not yet, the 2 stopped, the distance of a whisper, to decide together the next centimeter. The night entered without asking permission, with the sound of the sea insisting through the window cracks and the breeze carrying the smell of things about to change. Eleanor opened the door slowly, and there was Summer, standing, the blue dress reflecting the gentle light escaping from the living room. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick, as if the world had suspended its breath to watch. Summer took a step forward, and the light sound of sand on her shoes filled the silence. "I didn't know if you would actually open." "Neither did I," replied Eleanor, and the phrase came low, almost a confession. Summer entered, and the door closed behind her with a click that sounded definitive. The room was enveloped in a golden tone from the candles still burning. That space, until then full of solitary memories, now seemed to breathe differently. Eleanor felt her heart beating loud enough to be heard, but Summer did not retreat. She stopped in front of her and observed her like someone looking for a safe place to land. "If you want me to leave, just say so." Her voice was calm, without urgency, an offering of respect. "If I wanted to, I would have already said so." Eleanor's smile was timid, but honest. Summer approached, slowly. The jasmine perfume, the sound of fabric brushing the air, the warmth rising between them. Eleanor raised her hand, hesitant, and touched her face. The gesture was simple, but within it lived years of restraint, of silent loves, of unspoken desires. Summer closed her eyes for an instant, breathing in the touch, and then brought her own hand to Eleanor's waist, with a reverent care, as if asking for permission in silence. "I don't want to rush you," she said. "You're not. You're just reminding me how it feels to be alive." The kiss came like a reunion. Nothing rushed, nothing choreographed, just the natural flow of 2 people who finally recognize each other without fear. Summer's mouth was warm, and the taste mixed salt, tea, and some courage Eleanor didn't know how to name. Their hands sought each other as if the body knew the path before the mind. There was a silent dance in the gestures, the sliding of fingers, the curve of shoulders, the shared breath. The entire world stayed outside that beach house. Eleanor felt time dissolve. Each touch was a new memory being written over old scars. Summer kissed with the calm of someone who understands that pleasure can also be a prayer, and Eleanor responded with the surrender of someone who learned that loving, sometimes, is an act of faith. Skin found skin, and the warmth grew until it became a whole language, understood without translation. The candlelight trembled, the sea beat like a distant drum, and between each breath there was a silent dialogue. "I see you, I feel you, we are safe." The blue dress slid as if it had waited for that moment to fall. Eleanor felt the cold fabric and the contrast with Summer's warm body. Their hands explored slowly, respecting the rhythm, discovering territories not out of a desire for possession, but for presence. When Eleanor pressed her lips to Summer's neck, she heard a sigh that was not just pleasure, it was release, the sound of someone letting go of the entire past in a single breath. They lay down with naturalness, their bodies fitting together like someone returning home after a long absence. The touch was sometimes firm, sometimes delicate, but always attentive. Each movement brought a different kind of silence, the one that heals, the one that invites, the one that speaks without needing to name. Eleanor realized there was no guilt there, only belonging. Summer touched her face with the same tenderness with which one touches something precious and fragile, and in both their eyes there was a mirror, the reflection of what they had never been able to live out loud. Time did not measure that night. It could have lasted minutes or hours, they wouldn't be able to tell. When tiredness came, it was sweet, shared. Summer rested her head on Eleanor's chest, and the sound of her heart mixed with the waves outside. Their breathing aligned until it seemed like one. "Stay like this for a while," murmured Eleanor, running her fingers through the blonde hair spread like threads of light on the sheets. "Like what?" asked Summer, smiling with her eyes closed. "As if the world had stopped just for us to exist." They fell asleep enveloped in calm. And for the first time in a long time, Eleanor dreamed without guilt. She dreamed of open sea, of freedom, of the sound of a laugh that did not apologize. When the sun entered through the window, the colors were different. The blue of the wall seemed lighter, the white of the sheets had a new shine. Summer woke up first, looked at Eleanor sleeping and smiled with tenderness. The scene seemed like a photograph she would never be able to take. She touched her face with the backs of her fingers, slowly, so as not to wake the moment. But Eleanor opened her eyes, and the smile repeated, natural, without defenses. "Waking up like this should be illegal," Summer joked. "We can be the most beautiful crime of the summer," replied Eleanor, still sleepy. The morning continued slowly, complicit. They made coffee laughing at banal things, their hands meeting all the time, still not believing that what was a dream the day before now fit into simple gestures, sharing a cup, combing hair, exchanging looks in the bathroom mirror. Chloe was still sleeping, which gave them the privilege of a normality without disguises. Between the coffee and the sound of the seagulls, Eleanor perceived something profound. It wasn't just passion. It was the feeling that, with Summer, she had discovered a new way of loving herself. When Chloe woke up and came down, the two were already sitting on the porch, talking about the wind. The conversation was light, almost common. No sign of a secret, just a different vibration in the air, imperceptible to distracted eyes. Chloe sat between them, and Eleanor looked at the sea, grateful in silence. Life, she thought, is made of moments like this, fragile, but full of truth. After lunch, Summer said she needed to walk to town to take care of something for college. Eleanor accompanied her to the gate. The sun reflected on her skin, and the blue dress seemed even more alive under the light. "And now?" asked Summer, leaning against the fence post. "Now we breathe," replied Eleanor. "And let time do what it knows how to do." Summer nodded, her eyes moist, but serene. "I don't want to be a secret. Nor do I want to hide you." Eleanor smiled, a light tear falling. "When the time is right, things will reveal themselves. Then, see you later." "See you later, Summer." The kiss was brief, a seal, a reminder. Summer walked down the sandy road, and the wind messed up her hair like a sweet farewell. Eleanor stood there, watching until the silhouette disappeared among the trees. She felt an emptiness in her chest, but not of loss, of space. The kind of space that love leaves when fear goes away. In the days that followed, the house seemed to breathe differently. Chloe, unknowingly, noticed the change. "You seem lighter, Mom," she said one evening. Maybe the sea had an effect. Eleanor smiled and replied only, maybe it was the sea. Summer passed, but what happened in that house did not undo with time. Summer would return, once, then another, and each visit would be a reminder that some stories don't need a label, just truth. Eleanor learned that love does not have a single form, that it blossoms in the cracks, in the silences, in the courageous choices. She also learned that allowing oneself to feel is not weakness, it is the most honest way to exist. In the last scene, Eleanor is alone on the porch, looking at the horizon. The wind blows the same jasmine scent that one day announced the beginning of everything. She closes her eyes and smiles. The sea murmurs the same ancient sound, but now it sounds like a promise, not of a happy ending, but of continuity. Sometimes love doesn't come to complete us, she thinks. It comes to give back to us what we forgot we were. If this story touched you in any way, leave a comment sharing what you felt. Subscribe to the Secret Garden Stories channel to experience more stories of love, courage, and new beginnings. And remember, love is always a safe place when it is born from truth.